Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good cloudy day like I am. I am here joined by good friends Theodora Skeadas, Leah Ferentinos, and David Evan Harris. I'm so excited to start this discussion about the White House AI Action Plan. There's been a lot of talk about it. There's been a lot of discussion about it, but I don't think anyone has actually discuss how it's going to affect the trust and safety profession, which Integrity Institute is very much in the weeds of that. And so I am very, very happy to be moderating this panel today. We're going to talk about the AI action plan, but not just in the trust and safety lens, but a little bit more like what's it going to mean for us as workers, as citizens, what's it going to mean for us, our states. And so today we have a great panel of experts. I am taking notes here. I have the privilege of asking the first questions, but then there's going to be time for Q&A later on. So please hold on to your questions. And I think at the 40-minute mark, I think we're going to open it up for Q&A. So I just want to start by highlighting the bright people we have on the panel. And I'm going to start with David. I want him to introduce himself and then pass it on to Leah. And then, last but not least, always Theo, who is amazing. So go ahead, David, and introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Soribel. It's so exciting to be here, and thanks to the Integrity Institute for hosting this. I'm David Evan Harris. I teach at the University of California at Berkeley, teach a class on AI ethics for leaders, another class called scenario planning and futures thinking. And this is a topic I've been working on for a long time. I do a lot of work that I think is going to come up today that's relevant to this as a senior policy advisor for an organization called the California Initiative for Technology and Democracy. I've been working for most of the last 2 years on state AI legislation. So there's a lot of this action plan that feels it could have a big impact on the things I've been focusing my time on. But I also think it's relevant to share. I worked at Meta from 2018 to 2023. I was a research manager on the responsible AI team, worked on the civic integrity team and social impact teams as well. And I am just so excited for this conversation. Hand it back to you, Soribel.
Awesome. Leah and I met a few years ago, and I'm so happy to be.
Hopefully that was you breaking up and not me. So we'll see. Hi, my name is Leah Ferentinos. I'm a product policy manager at Credo AI, where I work on responsible AI, AI governance, risk management frameworks for best practices in AI safety and security. Prior to that, I worked at KPMG, where I was assisting big tech firms in trust and safety implementation of Digital Services Act, Digital Markets Act, Online Safety Act in the UK, etc. And prior to that, I was a product policy manager at Meta, where I worked in political ads policy, implementing election integrity and information integrity policies globally. And my background is in information integrity. I was a fellow at Yale Law School's Information Society Project, where we wrote best practice guidelines, white papers, Amici, about the trade-offs with speech and safety online. And back in the GDPR Section 230 debate days. So really excited to be here and talk about this with fellow friends.
Awesome. Last but not least, Theo, go ahead.
Thanks, Soribel. Hi, everybody. I'm Theo Skeadas. I wear a few hats. Very proudly, I am a new board member to the Integrity Institute. I also, yes, thank you so much. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all. And I also work as the chief of staff at Humane Intelligence, a nonprofit that has been doing AI red teaming with a whole bunch of organizations, including the National Institute for Standards and Technology, which is referenced in the AI Action Plan itself. And yeah, have a background in trust and safety, including having worked a few years ago at Twitter on the public policy team. And yeah, very happy to be here with you all. Looking forward to this discussion.
Awesome. And that was only half of Theo's bio, just so you know. I'm just going to leave it there. And I'm Soribel Feliz. I am currently a government employee. I work for DHS as an AI governance lead. I worked for Meta before, worked for Microsoft for a little bit, worked in Congress, worked for state. So lots of different things. I am excited to be moderating another conversation about AI. And I'm just gonna get started because I think people are here to hear from you guys. So let's just go. Let's just go. What do you guys say? Okay,
Sounds
good.
great.
Awesome. So my first question, and it's a burning question that a lot of people have. Like people have asked me, what is woke AI? What's that? What does that mean? And I know that woke AI is in reference to federal agencies. I'm making sure that federal agencies ensure that AI systems are truly free from ideological bias. So my question to you is, first of all, what is woke AI? How would you define that? And is it actually feasible to have a neutral AI system, knowing that AI is, it's trained on data and data is not unbiased? So what's woke AI? Is it feasible to have a neutral AI system? And talk about all of the, I mean, not all of them, but at least one of the compliance challenges that you see in all of this. So I'm going to start with David, and then I'm going to pick randomly on like either Theo or Leah.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think maybe after I comment, it would be also great to contextualize this. So, woke AI is mentioned in the action plan itself, and also in one of the 3 executive orders that were issued.
Yeah.
Should I pass it back to Leah or to Theo to maybe just
Yeah,
give a little
actually,
bit of context?
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm gonna give a little bit of an overview, just kind of like a dry overview, and just to talk about kind of what's in the AI action plan, what it focuses on, and then we'll definitely, let's chat about it.
Yeah. Leah, if you can just talk a little bit about this other 3 executive orders that mention woke AI. I was too excited and jumped into questions. Definitely want to give context to everyone.
Cool. I'm going to just give like a broad overview on what the AI action plan says, and Theo's got some other thoughts on some of the executive orders as well. But just kind of a broad overview on how the White House AI action plan is going to be rolled out. So it's basically a strategic initiative to sustain and enhance America's global AI dominance. This plan outlines more than 100 federal policy actions across 3 core pillars. So Pillar 1 is focused on accelerating innovation. This pillar focuses on removing regulatory barriers, promoting open source and open weight models, investing in a robust AI evaluation ecosystem. A key directive of this is the revision of the NIST AI risk management framework, NIST being the National Institute for Standards and Technology, to remove references to diversity, equity, inclusion, misinformation, and climate change. This is leading into your next question. Pillar 2 is about building American AI infrastructure. This pillar aims to expedite permitting for like data centers, establish an AI information sharing and analysis center for security threat intelligence, and to promote like secure by design AI technologies. Pillar 3 is about like leading in international diplomacy and security. This pillar directs the Department of Commerce to develop like full stack AI export packages to promote American AI globally. It also strengthens export controls and emphasizes evaluating frontier AI systems for national security risks. The plan formalizes the Chief AI Officer Council as the main interagency coordinating body. And there's a lot of other kind of like new and evolving ways that this is going to react. It creates a Center for AI Standards and Innovation. I think we're going to refer to that henceforward as CASey, as well as the Chief AI Officers Council. I think the revision to remove the DEA references, we can talk about in the first of the 3 executive orders. And these 3 generally are trying to prevent what the administration is referring to as ideologically biased AI in federal government. And I think At this point, I'll jump to Theo for a little bit more about the 3 executive orders, just to give people a little bit of context for what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to set the stage. So Leah has talked through the action plan, which was released. It's a 28-page document, and there's a corresponding press release. And I just dropped both of those in the chat so folks can see the language directly. If you look at the action plan page, 2 has the table of contents, which includes the 3 pillars that Leah just delineated. Concurrently, 3 executive orders were released. They are not one-for-ones, but they are very related. Much of what you see in the executive orders is language that is reflected, or at least the spirit of what is reflected in the action plan. So they were concurrently released and very, very related, but not necessarily a one-for-one mapping. And it's worth noting, as Soribel alluded to, that Executive Order 1 about woke AI has gotten the bulk of the attention, but in many ways, it's just one of 3 executive orders. And that language, the word woke, is not actually incorporated in the action plan itself, though some of the ideas do manifest in the plan. So the first of the 3, and I've dropped it in the chat, is specifically, as Leah alluded to, about prohibiting federal government agencies from procuring AI systems that embed ideological agendas, as it is used, not my language, specifically around diversity, equity, inclusion, critical race theory, intersectionality. And so the devil will be in the details, how this actually manifests, and I'll get to that in just a second. But it's really about federal government procurement of systems that have an ideological bent to them that is woke. And again, this has gotten the bulk of the attention. The second is around accelerating federal permitting of data center infrastructure. So it mandates that federal government agencies fast track permitting, use federal land, and ease environmental reviews to speed the construction of AI supporting data centers and energy infrastructure. Note that this ties very directly to climate objectives. So this is very relevant to ongoing climate conversations, mitigation conversations that we've been having, and also closely to state government agendas, because data centers are housed within states. And so the intersection between federal and state issues is very prevalent here. The third is about promoting the export of the American AI tech stack, directing federal government agencies to support the development, standardization, and export of US-based AI hardware and software to allied nations, boosting global AI. And this third executive order feeds very nicely or naturally into the third pillar around international AI diplomacy and security. The second feeds very nicely or naturally into the AI infrastructure. Again, it's not a one-for-one exactly, but there are clear parallels. And then to get to the question specifically around what do we think about this first executive order on woke AI? Basically, what Trump is calling out is chatbots, image generators, and other tools whose outputs are perceived as exhibiting some sort of liberal bias. But as many people have said over the last several days, it's very hard to steer models to do exactly what we want them to do. It's not so easy as to put it in writing and say, we're not going to allow these models to exist or be procured by the government. As we know, these models draw on very vast quantities of data and are appropriating responses to a user's query, and are using information that exists in the world. It's just hard to train models in the exact direction that we want them to go. But also, if you asked a chatbot, for example, for its views on gun control, it might equivocate. It might echo Republican views, Democrat talking points. If you're in New York or if you're in Texas, as a voter, as a reader, you might receive the information very differently. If you're in a different cultural context, Malaysia, France, Nigeria, let's say places where gun control laws vary, you might receive the information very differently. The idea that it is woke or that it has a very specific political bent, it isn't really how it plays out in practice. And so I think the devil will be in the details, like how the administration decides what tools qualify as neutral, really will be the question. And I just wanted to flag that this connects very closely to, I think it's page 7 of the AI risk management, or of the AI action plan, which talks about the National Institute for Standards and Technology revising the AI risk management framework, which was published in 2023, to remove mentions of misinformation, diversity, equity, inclusion, and climate change, and really impacts the risk management framework's utility. So that's part of where Executive Order number 1 plays into the AI action plan.
And
Anything to add?
And this NIST AI RMF framework has become fairly industry standard practices for AI governance, along with ISO 42001, as basically the sets of questions and criteria that companies should use to kind of internally govern their AI systems. And so this change may have an impact in how that AI governance is conducted. But again, the metrics and measures that this will impact are kind of yet to be determined. So we should continue to listen to more information as it is released.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I can jump in on the
Yeah,
back to
go
the
ahead.
original question. Yeah. So just to clarify though, with Leah, we should expect potentially many more executive orders. This is just the first three, right? There could be a lot more that would be needed to implement this plan. So the woke AI, what does woke AI mean? I think the only way to answer this question is to contextualize it in the broader white supremacist project that defines so much of what's going on in the Trump administration. I think there's just no way to dance around that. We are in an unprecedented moment of violent rounding up of immigrants in this country. We are in a moment of deportations without due process, and we're in a moment of also trivial efforts to do things like rename military bases, rename aircraft carriers, and to purge this idea of wokeness from AI is really fascinating. But I think there's another piece of historical context which is so critical here, which is that so much of the last decade of the Republican Party's identity has centered around the idea of free speech. And this is the exact opposite of free speech. This is saying free speech, is fine as long as you don't say three words: diversity, equity, or inclusion. And that is if someone could mute, that would be great. Thank you. So when they use these terms, and obviously there's some mistakes. Like Google is never going to live down the racially diverse Nazi images. It's just like that is such red meat for the Republican Party base, that's just going to keep getting cited for a really long time. This idea that certain AI systems by tech companies that the administration loves to hate on are actually recasting American history. And I think this is one of the the things that some people don't like about other cultural cultural artifacts like the musical Hamilton, which is famous for casting diverse people into many roles. And so that's it's this broader culture war, and this is where we're seeing this broader culture war that's happening in America applying to AI. Now, how this gets implemented is just mind-boggling, and honestly, I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited about the idea of someone trying to systematically determine, and Theo started to talk about this, systematically determine what a truth-seeking AI is and what a neutral AI is. And now the AI company that has been most boldly making claims and even marketing its AI as truth-seeking, or using similar terms, is Grok from Elon Musk. And Grok is famous now for having someone on the Grok team, maybe at the direction of Elon, maybe not, actually inserting into Grok's system prompt, which is the piece of Grok that makes it do what it does. It's kind of like its instructions, an instruction to start promoting the idea of white genocide in South Africa, which is just false. And so we've had a series of controversies where Grok also started calling itself Mecha Hitler and getting into very blatant anti-Semitism. And it's kind of unbelievable, the idea that any court could look at something like what Grok is and look at those behaviors that have come to light in the last few months and say, oh yeah, Grok is truth-seeking and neutral. That's okay for the federal government to procure from Grok. And so this broader idea of truth-seeking has a history in the tech industry that that goes back quite a ways to the idea of fact checking. I've been a big fan of fact checking for a long time. I think that fact checking is a critical ingredient to social media in helping make sure that untrue things, or to use the language of this executive order, that non-truth seeking things are not going viral on social media. Now, of course, social media and AI are two different things, but we're seeing this idea now that there is a truth. And this is strange because Mark Zuckerberg was just getting rid of Facebook's fact checkers only a few months ago in what I read as an effort to please the Trump administration. So there's just so much mental gymnastics that you have to do to get yourself into this executive order and into thinking about, whoa, how could this ever be applied? And I think it's just going to be a cudgel and a weapon to deny certain AI vendors access to federal procurement processes. But maybe somewhere there'll be some interesting conversations about what truth is that could actually lead us in some interesting directions. So I'll stop there.
Well, on that happy note, I would like to talk about states and states' role in this AI action plan. So there's a clause in there that says that states may lose federal funding if they maintain or introduce stringent AI regulations. And I just want to pass it on to Theo to see if she can explain what this means. What does this mean for state sovereignty? What can states, like, how should they thread this very delicate needle here?
Yeah. And I think I appreciate, David, that you took a step back and sort of gave context in which all of this is happening, because this is not happening in a vacuum. It's important that we contextualize the broader ecosystem here. So this language and this idea we've seen now for several weeks and several months, sort of ongoing attacks against state independence. Most notoriously in recent days, in July, there was a large conversation around a moratorium of state legislation around the issue of AI that was introduced in the big, beautiful bill. Ultimately didn't happen, but moved pretty far into the process and really threatened the idea of state sovereignty, something that we have upheld in our democracy for a very long time. And so this is not the first time that states are now feeling threatened uh, and are coming under attack. We've seen that the cutting of federal funds has been used by this administration over the last several months to try to control and influence state behavior. And we've also seen a lot of self-censorship or proactive changing of behavior so that issues can be mitigated in advance. And so to me, there's a real concern that this is advancing pre-existing rhetoric and actions that are undermining state autonomy. And I specifically want to call this out in the context I mentioned this earlier of the second executive order on permitting data center infrastructure, which in many ways circumvents state autonomy to fast track data centers without really engaging states in the process. But ultimately, these data centers are housed in states, and therefore states need to be part of that process. So there are multiple points in the executive orders and also in the action plan itself where this tension between federal and state sovereignty arises.
And as we've all seen over the past several years, there's kind of been an overwhelming increase in state interest in AI regulation. Theo and I actually attended a conference with Senator James Maroney at Yale Digital Ethics Center a few months ago, kind of talking about how states are working toward building this kind of regulatory repertoire, like Texas is passing something, Colorado AI Act, Utah, Montana, a few in California. And so like this is kind of, this is moving across being like kind of a patchwork state regulatory like framework. So I think this is, it's going to continue in this way.
And David, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I would love to. Thanks, Soribel. So the states have been called for a long time the laboratories of democracy. And I think what the federal government is trying to do here is funnel massive amounts of resources cut back on rules for the AI labs, and shut down the laboratories of democracy. And I think this is a really, really big problem. And just to give you an idea of the scale of this, and these numbers are from a couple months ago, but as of April of this year, there were 148 bills that passed across 43 states. All 50 states have introduced bills on AI. And in 2024 alone, 44 states introduced bills on AI. These are across a wide variety of topics. And the idea that the federal government should show up and say, we're going to preempt state action on AI, but not do anything ourselves is a huge slap in the face to legislators from both parties who have been working in the states to do so much on this. And when this was brought up as part of the big beautiful bill, Marjorie Taylor Greene spoke up against it, Josh Hawley spoke up against it, but the person who I didn't expect, which is interesting because I testified in front of her last year in the U.S. Senate, was Marsha Blackburn. It was the leader in getting that taken out of the big beautiful bill, and she's a Republican senator from Tennessee. And she is on the Senate Judiciary Committee subcommittee on privacy, technology, and the law, where I testified. And she had great questions on that committee, but it didn't seem like she was going to be the one who took Ted Cruz's terrible idea and rallied 99-1 a vote against it and got that out of the big beautiful bill. But the reason why, there are a couple of reasons why that I've heard, but I think the reason why is my favorite state AI law by name, the name of the law. Some of you will probably already guess, but it is none other than the Elvis Act. And the Elvis Act is an acronym for a bill
Tennessee.
from Tennessee, exactly. And that's because Nashville, Marsha Blackburn represents Nashville and musicians who don't want AI companies stealing their creative work. And that's so interesting, this idea that a Republican senator would shoot this down. And now it's come back in the executive order, or in the AI action plan, and one of the orders, that in a way that it is going to basically bully the states into trying to get them to do less. Now, again, this is like mental gymnastics are needed to figure out how this will be enforced. I mean, the idea of figuring out, like, what does it mean for state regulation to be overly stringent is wild. I mean, where do we draw that line? And again, I think this opens up a lot of subjectivity, opportunities for agencies to make decisions in blunt ways that will probably lead to lawsuits. And I think the only good news out of this, there's a great interview with Michael Kratziotz, one of the leader of the Office of Science and Technology Policy, who was ostensibly behind a lot of this executive order. Is he basically admitted this is the best the executive branch could come up with without congressional action. So I think that this may end up causing some states to lose some funding, but I think that really this is not nearly as bad as what was being proposed by Congress. Congress could act, or word is Congress will try to act on this again to block states. But I think we should look for this to be a battleground for quite some time to come.
Well, on that other happy note, I want to direct the conversation to the trust and safety profession, which actually affects everyone. So it's actually relevant to all of us here. What does the action plan mean for the trust and safety profession, for content moderation? Now we had companies that scale down their content moderation teams to please the new administration, and now we have no woke AI. So what does that mean? That there's a lot of uncertainty in those two contradictions. So who wants to go first? I think David wants to go first.
Yeah, so sorry, I was in the chat. We're talking about trust and safety, and what does no woke AI mean in the trust and safety profession?
Well, what does the AI action plan mean
Okay.
for the health and safety protection profession?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. Again, I think some context is needed here. We're at a moment where um, trust and safety is sometimes people think of trust and safety as synonymous with the idea of content moderation. The idea of content moderation has for a long time been under attack by Trump and the broader MAGA movement that, as I mentioned, over the past decade or so, has been really deeply rooted in free speech and or a specific version of free speech that they've been promoting. Um, Now, this is a big shift because there's a heavy weight being placed on these companies. And now, a big question will be, what kind of AI are these companies selling to the federal government that causes them to have to comply with some of these executive actions? How does that apply to lines of business that happen in other parts of their company? And where does that how do these things apply? But I think that right now, the moment that the trust and safety profession is in is really was really well defined by the Free Press in this report from a couple of years ago called the Big Tech Backslide. And there's been sort of systematic withdrawal and divestment, reduction of expenses on trust and safety by all of the big social media platforms. And especially in the last 2 years, we're seeing this move towards, let's have AI do all the content moderation. Now that is also really strange and dystopian, and I think AI could be really valuable for doing some of the content moderation. Don't get me wrong, but the idea of ending up in a world in which there's already almost no way that most people can figure out how to appeal a decision when their content is taken down from Facebook or when they're shadow banned or when their content's removed from other platforms. But a world where AI is doing all of this is frightening, and a world where AI is doing this in a way that it must necessarily be not woke, must not be in any way based on these principles of DEI. And again, what I'm describing goes beyond the letter of these executive orders, but I think that these executive orders set a tone for what the tech companies are expected to do or what the tech companies expect they can get away with under this administration. So I do think that this AI action plan leads us down a road where social media trust and safety could look very different from what it is today. I think it gives these companies even more permission to gut any remaining trust and safety teams that already exist. Elon led the way on that, getting rid of about 81% of Twitter's staff. Mark Zuckerberg has done quite a bit on that. And who knows where this is going. It's very hard to say, but I don't think this is good news for the trust and safety profession. I think it means more intervention in ways that we haven't really experienced yet from government, actually.
Just framing it a little bit differently. So under the first pillar, accelerate AI innovation, the very first section of conversation is remove red tape and onerous regulation. So a huge theme in the action plan is deregulation. We've seen trust and safety teams originate in a less regulated environment because there isn't as much external regulation. And so if we see a push towards deregulation, it means that there's an opportunity for trust and safety teams to potentially fill that gap because there's not as much external guidance and there's more that the teams could be taking on themselves. And because so much of this is about extending the use of AI, investing in AI, finding more use cases, it means that there's just a lot more for trust and safety teams to do because this technology will be proliferating. And Eric, to your comment, what are our thoughts about whether this leaves the door open for Grok-like efforts? I mean, I think that's part of what we're discussing here is that like as AI pushes into the space, like there is a corresponding need for trust and safety teams to adapt. I don't know if the companies will necessarily take those on as priorities, but I see the need for trust and safety interventions more in a less well-regulated environment.
And I think just kind of riffing off of that, that you mentioned, because like the executive order does frame it in the kind of in the removing regulatory burdens framework, but it doesn't necessarily remove the goal of governance. And so like although regulatory levels may be lower, it doesn't necessarily equate to removing of standards. Like we have this development of Casey and additional procurement mechanisms through OMB. So while like the focus on regulations might decrease, I think that for trust and safety, there might be more firms that focus on governance and like internal governance and adhering to these standards that might jump into the game in addition to the trust and safety teams to kind of follow these kind of like regulatory standards and frameworks.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next question. I feel like time is running so fast. But how do you, the panelists, how do you reconcile the need for rapid AI innovation with the potential risks of unregulated development? Like, what safeguards ideally should be in place so that we don't have a robot take over?
I have some strong thoughts on this. So, as I mentioned, the nonprofit that I work with, Human Intelligence, organizes AI red teaming events. We actually did, coincidentally, an AI red teaming event with NIST last year. It was 2 phases. I'll drop a link in the chat. So, first was a 500-person red teaming event of their ARIA test bed, and then the second was the risk management framework. That had been published, the sort of addendum, and it lists approximately 12 different risk categories like CBRN, confabulation, hateful conduct, data privacy, environmental impacts, harmful bias, etc. And notably, the action plan calls for hackathons to test AI systems for transparency, effectiveness, use control, and security vulnerabilities. And that the DoD, DOE, KC, and the Department of Homeland Security, NSF, and academic partners should coordinate an AI hackathon initiative to solicit the best and brightest from US academia to test AI systems for all of these things. And that is, in fact, what we did. So I'm glad to see that there's some language around red teaming for vulnerabilities. I think that assessing models in the sort of hackathon or red teaming way is a really great intervention because it allows us to identify potential risks. And so that's language that I'm quite excited to see because it affirms some of the work that's already been underway that helps to reconcile innovation with risks. So that was one thing that got me a bit excited.
Awesome. And Leah or David, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, you want to go first?
No, go for it.
Yeah, so I think that this dichotomy that is presented between the idea of AI regulation versus innovation is just fundamentally false. And I think that anytime we hear that, we need to quickly reject it. And I think that it most commonly is brought up in the context of this broader canard of we're in an AI race with China and we must win at all costs. And in addition to being, xenophobic and Manichaean in ways that I think are unproductive fundamentally, I think this actually is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of China's own AI strategy. And China's AI strategy is build AI that's good for the Chinese Communist Party's continued rule, and also build AI that's good for the Chinese people and build AI that supports education, that supports the development of skills, that supports a workforce that can actually build factories, build energy infrastructure faster, and deregulating the AI sector in the United States might initially look like, oh, well, this is going to help remove red tape for these AI companies. But was this really a problem for the AI companies? I mean, the AI companies developed and did very well under the previous administration, which is ostensibly the overregulated state that we're trying to deregulate our way out of. And so I don't buy into this idea. And another way to think about this is we want to drive fast on the road that is AI. Now, you can drive fast on a road with no rules, and then that's going to end up looking like Mad Max. Like, that is a road that is strewn with the carcasses of burnt out vehicles and destroyed societies and failed tech companies colliding with one another. Or you can set some basic rules of the road. You can set some speed limits. You can require driver's licenses. You can do some basic things to make it so that the road is a safe place that is orderly and predictable, that people can get from A to B to. The other thing I just want to say is, when people say we have to win the AI race, that is also predicated on this notion that there is a winning, there is an end. And I think that itself, there's a big question. Like, when we hear that, win the AI race, what exactly does that winning mean? Does that mean that the tech billionaires consolidate further concentration of wealth and power? More than they even have today? Is that winning? That they become this, even more, record-breaking, historically unprecedented set of companies that has so much money and power in their hands, and that's facilitated by the Trump administration, and they have more money than any Chinese billionaires. And is that winning? Is that winning if that means that there's 20% unemployment in the US, there's 30% unemployment in the US because AI has taken all the jobs away? I mean, these are huge assumptions that go into the broader framing of this, as regulation versus winning the race, and regulation versus innovation, that I think don't really do us a service as a society.
And I think there's also, there's not just the kind of regulation versus winning frameworks. I mean, there's also some kind of like measured, like middle ground that I think this AI action plan is trying to get at least in verbiage, about, kind of like sector specific standards creations, about like creating tailored standards that reflect like specific contexts in which AI is used, like use cases and potential impacts and like risks that are unique to each industry and domain. And I think that, we will figure out kind of what that means, the measurement systems that we can use to address those, as well as like what the tools and the actual classification mean, and like kind of further classifications of like what these executive orders actually mean on a practical level. But there is some middle ground, I think, that is available in this current AI action plan, that it's not just like, doomsday scenarios.
Sorry, Bill, I think we're transitioning to Q&A, but just one quick comment that David and Leah's comments inspired. So actually, two quick comments. One is that, to the point of this being a false dichotomy, it's worth calling out that the best regulated states in the country are also the most innovative, right? California, New York, Massachusetts, right? Like, these are the most regulated environments, and they're also where these technology companies are based, where we see the most population and most innovation. So it is certainly a false dichotomy. And I also wanted to pull on this idea that, like, at the end of the day, AI doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is meant to drive better quality lives for Americans, right? Lower energy bills, better healthcare, faster disaster response, more efficient public services. But if we are fast tracking data centers around the country, particularly in places that are water shortage prone, drought prone, hurricane prone, and then exacerbating existing climate issues, at the end of the day, are we really helping people if we're straining their environmental contexts even more? And I think this tension is something that the action plan and the executive orders really does not reconcile. How do we improve the lives of Americans if we are further straining our environment without regard to environmental constraint?
Can I just throw in one more quick thing, sorry, Bo, before we jump to Q&A?
Awesome. I do want to wait, but I have one last thing. One last question that I
Go
want to
ahead.
ask. Maybe you can include it in here. So this is going to be like a lightning questions, so please keep it brief. But what are some of the highlights and lowlights, in your opinion, of the AI action plan? And what do you think was left out of the action plan? So you can start with you, David, and then go to Leah and Theo.
So highlights, I already said one. I do actually love the idea that the government is going to pursue truth-seeking AI. I don't think that is what they think it is, but I like the idea of going down that road and trying to see, what that means. Because up until now, Section 230, writing on the wall was tech companies aren't responsible for anything that's said on their platforms. And there was even some speculation that that could apply to AI. I also really like there was mention in the action plan of foreign malign influence campaigns, and it was not like a huge section, but then that's something that JD Vance has touched on before in his Paris speech as well, earlier this year, acknowledging that there is a line and a place at which these companies are responsible for defending democracy. So I think there are some really good things in here, and I don't mean to be just negative on everything. I think Leah and Theo did a great job of calling out some good things in here. I'm deeply concerned about the spirit of the woke AI provision, and the idea that we're going to try to somehow systematically eliminate DEI, and I think that does set us up for civil rights lawsuits in the future. And I think that when AI systems are used to evaluate people's mortgage applications, evaluate people's college job applications, that's going to be a really big problem. And one other low light, there's this idea that we should fast track plans to build data centers on federal Superfund sites, like really highly polluted sites. I mean, my thoughts are with the people who end up working in these data centers in these highly polluted locations. I mean, this if all of the environmental rules that are going to be foregone in the interests of fast tracking this stuff are going to have real harms to communities that need clean water, that need their own electricity, and the workers who end up in these facilities.
Okay. Leah or Theo, any thoughts? Any quick thoughts?
I mean, I do think there are some strong references to governance, the support for open source and open weight models, the investment in AI evaluation tools, promotion of US AI exports, increase in export controls, requiring frontier model security assessments. There are the creation and elevation of the Chief AI Officers Council, the creation of Casey, the emphasis on kind of like trusted AI and like third-party risk management. I think that there are some very strong ways to operationalize this, but a lot of the operationalization is just not it's not here yet. So we have to continue to be vigilant and pay attention to like what that tooling will mean, what the measurement will mean. And there are a lot of kind of key dates upcoming into when information will drop about like when do grants open up for AI, that the government is going to be giving for AI, and like what are the like kind of the key ways that this will be implemented, I think are some things to look out for.
Yeah, I think just a repeat of what I shared, I'm excited about red teaming. I think that that's a great way to assess vulnerabilities. I'm glad that that language was called out specifically. I'm concerned about the broad deregulation, what it means and how the sort of push away from woke AI will be implemented, the infringement on state sovereignty, and the environmental tensions that exist between the fast tracking rollout of data centers and existing environmental constraints.
Awesome. We have only 5 minutes left for Q&A. I see one question that came early on, so I want to start with that one, and then maybe people can come off their mics and ask their own questions. But I'll warm us up with this one. So John's question was, what does this mean for when we do switch political lanes for AI governance? Are we going to swing from one pole to the other, having to change weights and guardrails and bias with every new administration that decides what our definition of AI is. So, any thoughts on that? And I think that's a very fair question.
I mean, it does provoke a funny idea. It's like there's a Trump administration, filter on these AI models, and as soon as the next administration comes in or the next executive order, they remove that filter and they comply to a different thing. And we could end up in a world also where we have different versions of these products in different countries too. So I mean, it does seem like the broader shift across so many aspects of American life and society is this huge whiplash when we go from one party rule to another. And my hope is that tapers off at some point. But yeah, it seems like a reasonable guess that it's going to be jarring for these companies to move back and forth. I don't know. I think some of these companies have really gone all in with the Trump administration, and it's hard for me to imagine how they're going to recast the brand and the identities of their leaders in a future administration in a way that they could cozy up so closely to it in the way they have with Trump.
Yeah, I see it. Theo, do you want to add something
Oh
to that?
yeah, just I agree, but I wanted to caveat it too. I think that there are some parallels between the two administrations that um, aren't necessarily as visible. I was chatting with somebody who until recently worked at NIST yesterday just about this exact issue, namely this idea that the Biden administration was also interested in great power competition. So it's not like this just came into force with the Trump administration, like the CHIPS Act, like so much of what the Biden administration was trying to do was actually many of these things create a more competitive environment for American infrastructure, American AI technology. Like some of this is not new. And so, yes, there is certainly some whiplash, but I also see some continuity thematically, specifically when it comes to great power competition, that third bucket of
Yeah.
the AI action plan.
Yeah, and going off of that point, I was at a conference by Law AI in DC a few weeks ago, and Ben Broussard, who's a professor at Johns Hopkins, who helped write the Biden executive order on AI, mentioned these continuities and saw that a lot of the concepts and ideas, and even some of the language that he wrote in the previous executive order, did translate to this administration. And that's why it's really key to figure out, how this is going to be operationalized specifically.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and I want to end with a question that is relevant to our community, the Integrity Institute community, the trust and safety community. What are some of the new jobs, roles, and tasks that TNS teams, trust and safety teams, policy teams, that the plan will create? Like, will there be new jobs for people who, for our audience in the Integrity Institute? Or is it just further solidifying red teaming and in the existing jobs that we do in the trust and safety community?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are already so many new jobs, and those of us on the call have some of those jobs. Whether it's compliance, right? The rollout of regulatory frameworks across Europe has created a huge compliance ecosystem in organizations like Credo AI and consulting firms like KPMG and Deloitte and others that are rising up to respond to regulation. So I think compliance related roles is something we'll see more of. And I also think that, yeah, red teaming, as I think Jen notes, those of us who are doing red teaming, it wasn't as proliferated as it is now. Also, just AI auditing, AI evaluations broadly, not just limited to red teaming, but like assessing AI systems for all kinds of issues is new. And of course, yeah, there are new technical roles that are opening up, but I do see a lot of opportunities, particularly for those of us who are already in this
Yep.
space. I will say I think it's harder for new entrants in some ways.
I think there's also, on top of that, a lot of us who come from trust and safety are ending up in kind of these new AI governance roles across, consulting, AI governance firms, kind of third-party risk management, but as well as in companies that are not, traditionally tech companies. I think you're going to see a lot of new AI governance roles in, like pharmaceutical companies or banks, or, kind of managing internal like AI that they hadn't previously rolled out. And I think that those kind of new internal roles, like I'm seeing these pop up all the time in industries that are not traditionally associated with AI or tech. And I think that that's something to look out for in the trust and safety space as well. If you're like trying to transition into working in AI policy, or just to learn more about AI governance, like you can do that within your own company as you are now.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'll add, I do think also lots of roles here, and also the people in those roles will be in a lot of really uncomfortable situations. Not always, but from time to time. And I think that's why the Integrity Institute is so important. And no one told me to say this, but I will just say, if you're not a member of the Integrity Institute and you work in this field, or you find yourself working in one of these roles where you are faced with, daily intellectual, ethical challenges, the Integrity Institute for me has been an unbelievably valuable place to go have these conversations in a place of confidence with really, really smart other members, and there's just it's been so valuable to me. So just find ways, tell your friends who work in these roles to join the Institute, and keep following the Institute for this kind of thing. So thank you so much to the Institute for hosting this.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
I
you,
hope it was
everyone.
everyone. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Soribel, for
Soribel,
hosting too.
yeah, thank you for hosting, and thank you to my fellow panelists for their eloquent and interesting comments.
And
Thank
thank
you.
you for
Take
your
care.
eloquent and interesting comments.
Bye.